poetry sometimes may seem like just a bit much, like why are we bothering? Just say what you want to say, move on with your life. However, poetry, then, the theory behind it is that we like a challenge. We need structure to challenge us to fit ideas into this structure, saying as much as we can with as few words as possible. And for sonnets really latch on to that structure thing. One of the challenges so far that you've encountered that I always get feedback on the museum project is that writing a poem is tough, like thinking of the subject, making it go where you want it to go and not meandering off into some other line of thought, or having it rhyme or having it fit. And so consider the museum project sort of a warm-up for the sonnet project. So the sonnet form has lots of rules, and they're all listed out here, and I'll kind of go through them, but you should have encountered all these in your sonnet notes. If you haven't done those yet, time to get started. A particular type of sonnet that is really common is the Shakespearean sonnet. Shakespeare wrote a lot of them. He didn't necessarily invent the form, but he's the one who has sort of made it famous. So sonnets are 14 lines long, which you should have learned from the notes. There is a shift within the sonnet. Often you'll find a word here at the beginning of that line where the shift happens that is a gear changer, like but, right, is the opposite. Yet, however, although. Or you'll get a mood shift from like positive words about angels and feathers and happy things to a more demonic shift maybe, or whatever. Yeah, you get the idea. So there's some kind of shift in a sonnet, in a Shakespearean sonnet, that happens in the last two lines, okay? Now the rhyme scheme for Shakespearean sonnets, the first and third lines rhyme, so that's A and A. The second and fourth lines rhyme, so they're marked B. From there, the fifth and seventh, the sixth and eighth, so on, and it ends with this couplet at the end, a set of two rhyming lines. So what we've got is 3 quatrains, so 3 lines of 4, and then a pair of lines. Total, that makes 14 lines, like I said. So we're going to look at this sonnet, and I'll show you, if you've never labeled rhyme scheme before, which I can't imagine that is true, but it could be true, the way that we kind of execute or apply this A, B rhyme scheme is we look at the last words on the lines, and we say what rhymes. Makes sense, start with A, minds. Okay, we're going to mark that A. What other lines rhyme with line A? Love doesn't rhyme. Finds, minds. Okay, those rhyme, so we're going to mark that A. Remove, mark, shaken, bark, taken, cheeks, come, weeks. Okay, so none of the other words rhyme with minds. Then we're going to say, okay, this is going to be line B because it's the second rhyme in the poem. So we need to find other words that rhyme with love. Remove, you might argue, doesn't, but maybe in Shakespeare's accent it did, and it looks like it ought to rhyme with that OVE ending. So we're going to mark it B at the risk of being wrong. Okay, same with mark. So now C, bark, rhymes, shaken doesn't. So we're going to mark it C. And there's nothing else in the poem that rhymes with mark or bark. And so on. What rhymes with shaken? Taken. That's a D. What rhymes with cheeks? Z is the next letter. Weeks does. And so on. Now, come and doom might not seem, again, like they rhyme. However, this wasn't written in an American accent. This was written in British accent, whatever that accent looked like in the early 1600s, and it's shifted some since then and gone all sorts of directions, as has the American sort of tongue. It's sort of developed regional dialects and that sort of thing. So when you're quick to judge, like come and doom, oh, that doesn't rhyme, use a sort of international or universal mindset of could these rhyme in maybe a different time, a different world, a different language set. Okay, so, and then finally we have our couplet at the end, proved and loved, which actually could be they sound the same, but this is an example of sonnet rhyme scheme. It won't usually work out that way with where the B lines rhyme with the couplet at the end. So that's not a coincidence, I'm sure. But for now, we're going to move on with our lives and pretend that it doesn't matter. So the AB section is that first quatrain, first set of 4 lines. The CD section is next, the second set, EF, and finally the couplet at the end. Now, the shift, we're not going to read this poem, but the shift happens here. You might want to say it happens here, but if you read the whole context of the poem, this is it. So you actually have to read the poem. You can't just say, oh, there's the word but, there's the shift. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to actually read it, and I just happen to know where this shift is. So anyway, that's a couple things about the structure of the sonnet. Now, when you're looking at this structure, you don't want to write about the rhyme scheme unless it's significant to the meaning. What I mean by this is that you don't need to write the rhyme scheme of this sonnet is A, B, C, D. Yeah, okay. I can almost guarantee you that the reader of an essay about a sonnet knows the rhyme scheme of a sonnet. Okay, we don't need you to tell us, we're aware. All right. So when you're looking at this sonnet, maybe there is significance to the fact that the second and fourth and the all-important couplet at the end, maybe it's not a coincidence that they rhyme. I mean, did Shakespeare just scribble this down and he ran out of things that rhymed? It's possible, okay? So we have ever fixed mark, every wondering bark, okay? Mark and bark rhyme, and when those 2 lines rhyme, it unites them, okay? They share this letter, right? A, B, C, that's a C, and C, okay? They're the C lines of rhyme, and so they're connected. Ever fixed, meaning always still, always remaining, and this, every wandering, okay? Like wandering from place to place, not really having an ever fixed mark to focus on, okay? So already we can see these lines with the words ever and every are similar in, I guess, wordage, if not opposite in meaning. So there's something going on here, uniting these lines, and it's just something to think about. So you may not be right. We may not be right in this regard. I may be just making stuff up here that I see and isn't really there. However, an essay is a discussion of the meanings of the poem. It's not a, this is right and there's no other way. It's a discussion where you go back and forth and saying, it could mean this, and here's why. And then someone else can come back and say, well, that's pretty good, but I don't really think that that's what we're going for here. Think back to Module 2 with the Perrine article, The Nature of Proof and the Interpretation of Poetry. Think about that and about, we want the answer or the interpretation that is the most correct without any contradictions. Okay, so if you think about that, what in a sonnet can be the real meaning behind these words? All right. Do call it a sonnet instead of a poem if you're sure. So when you're writing on the AP test, you don't have to list out the rhyme scheme. You want to talk about the significance of it. You do want to call it a sonnet if you're sure it's a sonnet. Otherwise, play it safe and call it a poem. It's okay. You can just call it a poem, but if you notice, it has 14 lines, and, the last 2 rhyme. It has a regular rhyme scheme, and, you're kind of feeling it. There might be a shift, go ahead, be brave, right? Maybe it's a sonnet. But if you call it a sonnet, you have to discuss the shift, because a shift in a sonnet is important. Otherwise, we wouldn't really be focusing on it, and think of it as kind of the answer to the riddle. A sonnet kind of poses this puzzle, whether it's about darkness or light or women or love or nature. And the last 2 lines in a Shakespearean sonnet kind of give back an answer. And it can be a clever answer or a sincere answer, but it addresses what we've been talking about for 12 lines in the last 2 lines. Okay, So the shift is important because it's like introducing the punchline to the joke almost. All right, so that is it for tonight. Please stay on the pacing guide, take care of your progress report reflection, and get those revisions done.